There are a few general ways in which you can increase the enjoyment of your winter garden. Plants you can include that will add structure or seed heads and movement, color, of course, either through their stems or their blooms or their leaves, and also berries and hips, rose hips and things like that. And specifically in the dry shade underneath a fir tree, I have a few suggestions from my own garden here. I also don't want to water too much in this area. It is in the public sphere. There's a sidewalk and then a very large parking strip to this area over here that I'll show you. So these are the plants and some of the solutions I've used to make this entire walkway, which is fairly long, pretty in the winter time especially. It's the middle of January. It's bleak out and has been raining for a very long time and very windy. Hasn't affected this gorgeous paper bush in Edgeworthia. It's fragrant, and I really wish you could smell it. It perfumes a very large area, and this is the primary plant that draws me out to the garden this time of the year. There's other plants that would do well here, like sarcococca and daphnes, but this is the one I chose in part because I really love the structure of it and the shape. This beautiful sinuous trunk happened all on its own. I really didn't need to prune much on this sassafras tree. Do consider the shape of the tree when you are designing your winter landscape. And did you notice this beautiful, colorful dogwood behind me? That's something else, the colorful stems. They don't all have to be colorful, but a pop of that once in a while sure looks good. Even though the garden seems to sleep in the winter time, there's a lot of changes going on. The swelling buds of the sassafras tree. The day that the birds came and took all the berries away of the calocarpa. It happened overnight. But just a few weeks ago, this is what the calocarpa looked like. And last summer, this is what that area looked like, where the sassafras, the calocarpa, and the paper bush all live together happily alongside of a mullein. They just reseed themselves. I never know where they're going to pop up. This is snowberry, and it's not planted in that strip right now, but it will be in just a few weeks. I'm going to be doing some propagating. For a winter landscape, think about more than just the beautiful blooms that you can get from the few plants that do bloom in the wintertime. Think about the bark, the texture, and the color of it. You can see here how the bark of this grape is so interesting in the winter landscape, and it's not only curved and sinuous, but the way it peels. So don't be afraid to use colored furniture or wood in your landscape, because in the winter time any bit of color is so welcome. This is a coral bark maple. There's the older trunk, and the older branches are whitish, and then gorgeous coral colored bark on the newer branches. The forces of nature are apparent in the winter garden. This weeping larch lost its needles in the fall, leaving behind these lovely red stems. In the winter, the flame willow glows. This is Angel's fishing rod. It's in the iris family and has evergreen leaves. In the summer, we'll be able to enjoy the flowers and seed heads that will persist into the fall. A PG hydrangea, skeletonized flower, dances in the wind. Yesterday's blooms give way to today's hellebores. Nature plays with the garden, the wind in the grass, the frost on the moss and the stones, the light shining through the leaves. Ground covers are very important in the wintertime to protect the soil and to also give home to the little critters that are down there and the birds. All of it works together to invite nature in and to give you something more interesting to look at in the winter. This is some foxglove that overwinters, and then some violets. I have lots of violets that come up. Think about broadleaf evergreens, very large leaves and small ones. They come in all different colors. This is a osmanthus. It's a tiny leafed evergreen, broadleaf evergreen that gets fragrant flowers late in the winter and very early spring. Definitely worth growing in your winter landscape. It loves these conditions underneath the fir tree in the shade. I don't have to supply any extra water to it. A real star in the winter landscape. Below it is an autumn fern, and you'll notice how the textures and the colors contrast with each other. This is important to do in a winter landscape when you don't have as many blooms, at least in the Pacific Northwest we don't. And then of course conifer trees, which are a staple. They go all the way from silver to gold and every shade of green in between. I recently transplanted this cedar tree from a different area of the garden. It's a golden type cedar. It is dwarf. Now in our area, cedars do tend to grow a little larger than they say on the tag. However, this one really grows extremely slowly, and it's doing very well underneath this fir tree. I'm using it in this situation to end the garden, so that there is a clear sense of this is where our curve ends and something else begins after it. The other plant I'm using to end the property line here where the sidewalk goes is this golden Himalayan honeysuckle. It's a shrub, and it does hang on to these yellow leaves, but that's not the primary reason why I put it in this area. In the winter time, I like to see the green stems on it that are used in flower arranging, but it is an amazing shrub to use. It can handle a lot of abuse, dryness, shade, and it gets the most beautiful flowers and berries on it in the summertime. I hope you've enjoyed this little parade of winter plants, and until the next time, I'll be dreaming of you in the garden. Bye.